Chapter 7. A Walk in the Forest. For several days, Hester Prynne waited for a chance to speak privately with Mr. Dimmesdale. She would not go to his house because she was afraid of meeting Roger Chillingworth. Then she heard that the priest had gone to visit a family a little distance away and would be returning the next afternoon through the forest. "Come, Pearl," she said the next day. "We are going for a walk in the forest." The trees were tall and close together, and the path through them was dark and narrow under a gray sky. "Mother," said little Pearl, "the sunshine does not love you. It runs away and hides itself because it is afraid of something on your bosom. But it will not run away from me, because I do not wear anything on my bosom yet." "And never will, my child, I hope," said Hester. "Now run away and catch the sunshine." Pearl ran off, and Hester smiled when she saw that her child had found a circle of sunshine between the trees. But when Hester came near to it, Pearl said, "It will go now." Hester smiled. "Look, I can put out my hand and hold some of it." But when she put her hand into the circle, the sunshine disappeared. They walked on. Then Hester saw someone coming and said, "Go and play by the river, child, and leave me to speak to the gentleman who is coming." "Who is it?" said Pearl. "Can't you see?" said Hester. "It is the priest." "And he has his hand over his heart," said Pearl. "Go now, child, but not too far beyond the river." When Pearl had gone, Hester waited under the trees. The priest walked slowly, but he had almost gone by before Hester could find her voice. "Arthur Dimmesdale," she said, quietly at first, then louder. "Arthur Dimmesdale." "Who speaks?" he said, turning quickly. He saw a shadow under the trees, and then he saw the scarlet letter. "Hester? Hester Prynne, is it you?" "It is me," she answered. He touched her hand, and his touch was as cold as death. They moved back into the shadows of the trees and sat down on a fallen branch. At first they spoke of the weather, the gray sky, the coming storm, but then the priest looked into Hester's eyes. "Have you found peace?" he said. She smiled sadly and looked down at her bosom. "Have you?" she asked. "None. Nothing but misery," he answered. "But what else could I expect? You wear your scarlet letter openly on your bosom, Hester. Mine burns in secret. It is good, after these 7 years, to talk to someone who knows the truth. If I had one friend, or even an enemy, whom I could talk to openly each day, then perhaps it would save me. But now it is all lies, all emptiness, all death." Hester Prynne looked into his face. "You have the friend that you wish for, someone to cry with you over your sin. You have me, your partner in sin." She hesitated, then went on. "And you have an enemy, and you live with him in the same house." The priest jumped up and put his hand over his heart. "What are you saying? An enemy?" he cried. "In the same house? What do you mean?" "Oh, Arthur," she cried, Forgive me. In all things except one I have been true to you. But I agreed to keep a secret. I did it to save your position, Arthur, your work as a priest here in the town. But I cannot keep the secret any more. I must tell you. The doctor, the old man they call Roger Chillingworth, he was my husband. The priest stared at her for a moment, a black, violent look on his face. Then he dropped down onto his knees and buried his face in his hands. "Why didn't I guess it?" he said quietly. "Or perhaps I did. The horror in my heart when I first saw him, and when I see him now. Why didn't I understand? Oh, Hester Prynne, you don't know the horror and shame this news brings me. He has been secretly laughing at my sick and guilty heart. Woman, I cannot forgive you for this." "You will forgive me," cried Hester. "Let God punish me. You shall forgive me." She fell to her knees beside him, put her arms around him, and pulled his head against her bosom, not caring that his face rested on the scarlet letter. She could not allow him to hate her. For 7 long years all the world has blamed and hated me, she thought. But I shall die if this weak, sinful, unhappy man hates me too. "Will you forgive me, Arthur?" she repeated again and again. "Don't hate me. Forgive me, please." "I forgive you, Hester," the priest replied at last. His voice was sad, but not angry. "May God forgive us both. We are not the worst sinners in the world. That old man's revenge has been blacker than our sin, Hester." "Yes," she whispered. "We loved one another. We told each other. Have you forgotten it?" "Shh, Hester," said Arthur Dimmesdale, getting up from the ground. "No, I have not forgotten." They sat down on the tree branch, holding each other's hands. Around them the trees were dark, and the branches moved noisily in the wind. "What will Roger Chillingworth do now?" asked the priest. "Will he continue to keep our secret?" "He has a secret nature, and I think he will," said Hester. "But he will doubtless find other ways to take his revenge." "And me? How can I live in the same house, breathing the same air with this deadly enemy?" said Mr. Dimmesdale, his hand over his heart again. "Think for me, Hester. You are strong. Tell me what to do." "You must not stay with this evil man," said Hester. "But where can I go? I cannot hide from God," he said. "God will show mercy," replied Hester, "if you are strong enough to take advantage of it." "Be strong for me," he answered. "Advise me what to do." "Is the world so small, then?" said Hester, looking into his eyes. "Is there nothing beyond this little town? Walk a few miles from here, and the yellow leaves will show no sign of a white man's feet. There you can be free. A short journey will take you from a world where you have been miserable to one where you may still be happy. Then there is the sea. It brought you here, and if you choose, it can take you back again, perhaps to London or to Germany or France or pleasant Italy. You'll be beyond Roger Chillingworth there." "I can't do it," answered the priest. "I cannot walk away and leave my work. Although my own soul is lost, I must do what I can for the other human souls in my care. After 7 years of misery, you must leave it all behind you," said Hester, with passion in her voice. "Begin again. There is happiness to be enjoyed. There is good to be done. Change this false life for a true one. Teach, write, work among the Indians. Do anything except lie down and die. Why wait another day in this place? Go now." "Oh, Hester," cried Arthur Dimmesdale, "I am not strong enough nor brave enough to go out into the wide, strange, difficult world alone." Sadly, hopelessly, he repeated the word. "Alone, Hester." "You shall not go alone," she answered, her voice a deep whisper. Chapter 8. Hope for the Future. Arthur Dimmesdale stared at Hester, with hope, joy, and fear in his face. In his heart he had thought of this too, but only Hester had been brave enough to put it into words. Suddenly he knew that he wanted this better life that she described, and knew also that he could not live without her. "God, will you forgive me?" he thought. "You will go," said Hester, calmly, as he looked at her. And so it was decided. At once a strange feeling of happiness came over him, something which he had thought was dead in him. "Oh, Hester, God has been merciful," he cried. "This is already a better life. Why did we not find it sooner?" "Let us not look back," she answered. "The past is gone. Look!" And she pulled the scarlet letter from her bosom and threw it in among the trees. She breathed deeply. "I did not realize how heavy it was until I was free of it," she thought. Next, she pulled off her hat, and her hair fell down upon her shoulders, dark and rich, softening her face as it did so. She smiled, and her eyes were bright. Suddenly she was young and beautiful again, and filled with happiness. Another thought came into her head, and she looked at him and smiled. "You must learn to know Pearl," she said. "Our little Pearl. You have seen her. Yes, I know you have. But you will see her now with fresh eyes. She is strange and difficult to understand, but you will love her and advise me what to do with her. Do you think the child will be glad to know me?" asked the priest, looking worried. "Children do not usually like me, and I have even been afraid of little Pearl." "That is sad," said Hester, "but she will love you. Let me call her. Pearl! Pearl!" The child heard her mother's voice. She had been picking flowers and had put them in her hair and her clothes, but now she came slowly through the trees to the other side of the little river, very slowly, because she saw the priest. They watched her coming. "How strangely beautiful she looks with those flowers in her hair," said Hester. "She is a wonderful child, but I know whose forehead she has." It is a terrible thing to say, but I have often been afraid that others would see a likeness to me in her face and guess," said Mr. Dimmesdale. "But she looks much more like you." "Do not let her see anything strange," said Hester. "Do not be too excited or too loving. She will not understand, but she will love you in time." Pearl had stopped on the other side of the water and was looking at Hester and the priest. "Come, dear child," called Hester. "How slow you are! Here is a friend of mine who will soon be a friend of yours also. You will have twice as much love from today. Now hurry up." Pearl did not move. She looked first at her mother with wild, bright eyes, then at the priest. Then she put out a hand and pointed at her mother's bosom. "You strange child," said Hester. "Why don't you come to me? Hurry, or I shall be angry with you." The child began to scream, still pointing her finger accusingly at her mother's bosom. "I know what is wrong," Hester whispered to the priest. "She is missing something that she has always seen me wearing." "If you can quieten her, please do," said Mr. Dimmesdale. Hester, her face pale again, turned to the child. "Pearl," she said sadly, "look down beside your feet. There, the other side of the river." The child looked round and saw the scarlet letter lying at the edge of the water. "Bring it to me," said Hester. "Come and fetch it," answered Pearl. "The child is right about the letter, of course," Hester said to the priest. "I must wear it for a few more days, until we have left. The forest cannot hide it, but the sea will drown it." She stepped forward and, picking up the scarlet letter, fastened it to her bosom again. Next, she put up her hair again underneath her hat. A gray shadow seemed to fall across her as she did these things. She put out a hand to Pearl. "Do you recognize your mother now, child?" she said. "Will you come to me now?" "Yes, now I will," answered the child, and jumped across the water. "Now you are my mother, and I am your little Pearl." Gently she pulled down her mother's head and kissed her. Then she kissed the scarlet letter, too. "That was not kind," said Hester. "You show me a little love, but then you make a joke of it." "Why is the priest sitting over there?" asked Pearl. "He is waiting to welcome you," said Hester. "He loves you, my little Pearl, and he loves your mother, too. Come, will you not love him?" "Does he love us?" said Pearl, looking closely at her mother's face. "Will he go back with us, hand in hand, the three of us together, into the town?" "Not now, dear child," said Hester. "But soon he will walk hand in hand with us. We will have a home of our own, and you will sit on his knee, and he will teach you many things and love you dearly. You will love him, won't you?" "And will he always keep his hand over his heart?" asked Pearl. "Silly child! What kind of question is that?" said Hester. "Come and be nice to him." But Pearl made an ugly face and tried to pull away from her mother. And when Mr. Dimmesdale kissed her gently on the forehead, she ran down to the river and washed her face again and again until the unwelcome kiss was washed away. Then she watched silently as her mother and the priest talked quietly, making arrangements for their new life together. The plan was soon made. It was decided between them that the old world, with its crowds and cities, would offer them a better chance of living quietly and privately. And luckily, Hester knew of a ship which had recently arrived from Spain and would soon leave again to sail to Bristol in England. "I know the captain," she said, "and I can secretly arrange for you, me, and little Pearl to sail with him to England." "When does the ship leave?" asked Mr. Dimmesdale. "Probably 4 days from today," replied Hester. As he hurried back to the town, leaving Hester and Pearl to return to their cottage, Mr. Dimmesdale thought about the plan. 4 days' time is just right. 3 days from today I have to give my election sermon, and it will be a most suitable way to end my time here as a priest. At least they will not be able to say that I left without doing my job until the very end. He became more and more excited as he made his way back into the town. In this new, happier mood, everything looked and seemed different, even the people he met or passed in the street. He wanted to say to them, "I am not the man you think I am. I left him behind in the forest." Then he passed Mistress Hibbins, the governor's sister, who, unusually, stopped to speak to him. "So, Mr. Dimmesdale," she said, "you have been walking in the forest. You must tell me next time you plan to go. I will come with you, and we can meet our master." And she passed on by, giving the priest a secret little smile. "Why does she talk to me like this?" he thought nervously. "Does she see the black mark of the devil in my soul?" He was glad to reach his house, and hurried upstairs to his study. Here were his books, the window, the fireplace. Here he had written and studied and prayed. There on the table, with his pen beside it, was the half-finished election sermon, which he had left behind 2 days ago. Now he saw all these things differently, through the eyes of another man, a wiser man who had returned out of the forest. At that moment there was a knock at his door. "Come in," cried Mr. Dimmesdale, wondering if a devil would enter. Then old Roger Chillingworth came in, and the priest stood, unable to speak, with his hand over his heart. "Welcome home, sir," said the doctor, smiling. "How was your journey through the forest? You look pale. I think you will need my help if you are going to be able to give your election sermon in a day or 2. Don't you think so?" "No, not at all," replied Mr. Dimmesdale. "The long walk in the fresh air has been good for me after spending so much time in my study. Thank you, but I do not think I need any more of your medicine, my kind doctor." Did Roger Chillingworth know, the priest wondered, that he had met and talked with Hester Prynne? Did he know that in the priest's eyes he was now a hated enemy? Perhaps the friendly words from the doctor to his patient now had double meanings. "But, my dear sir, we must do whatever we can to make you strong and well," said Chillingworth. "The people expect great things from you, and are afraid that in another year you may be gone." "Yes, gone to another world," replied the priest, sadly. and may God make it a better one, because I don't expect to be with my people for another year. But thank you, sir. I do not need your medicine at the moment." "I am glad to hear it," said Chillingworth. "I thank you from my heart, most watchful friend," said the priest. "I can only repay your kindness with my prayers." "A good man's prayers are like gold," answered Roger Chillingworth, as he went out of the room. After he had gone, Mr. Dimsdale threw away his half-written election sermon and sat down to begin it again. All through that night he wrote, and the words seemed to come from God. Chapter 9. Escape. On the morning of Election Day, when the townspeople came together to meet their newly elected governor, Hester Prynne came into the marketplace in her usual dress of gray cloth, with the scarlet letter on her bosom. The quiet, sad look on her face hid the excitement deep inside her. Who in the crowd could guess her thoughts that day? "Look for the last time at the scarlet letter and its wearer. In a little while I will be beyond your reach. I will be free, and the scarlet letter of shame, which has burned on my bosom for 7 long years, will lie forever at the bottom of the sea." Little Pearl, sensitive to her mother's excitement without knowing the reason for it, was dancing along at Hester's side, singing or giving happy little shouts. "Why are the people not working today, Mother?" she asked, when she saw the crowd in the marketplace. "And look how many strangers there are here today, Indians and sailors among them. What is everyone waiting for?" "They are waiting to see the new governor go past," answered Hester, "and the magistrates, and the priests, and all the great and good people, with the soldiers marching in front of them to the music." "Will Mr. Dimsdale be there?" asked Pearl. "Will he hold out both his hands to me, as he did that day in the forest?" "He will be there, child," said Hester, "but he will not speak to you today, and you must not speak to him." "What a strange, sad man he is," said the child. "He held your hand and mine at night on the scaffold, and again in the forest. But here on this sunny day, among all the people, he does not know us, and we must not speak to him. What a strange, sad man, with his hand always over his heart." "Be quiet, Pearl," said Hester. "You don't understand these things. Don't think about the priest. Look around and see how happy everyone is today on this holiday." And it was true. Most people were smiling, and there was a lot of talk and laughter. The sailors from the Spanish ship, with their sunburnt faces and long beards, were noisier than most. They shouted and laughed and drank wine from bottles. Sailors in those days obeyed only the laws of the sea, and were allowed to do much as they liked on land. Even the Puritans smiled at their noisy ways. So it was no surprise to anyone to see a respectable man like old Roger Chillingworth come into the marketplace, speaking with the captain of the ship. Moments later, when the two men went their separate ways, the captain walked across to Hester Prynne. As usual, people avoided standing near her, which meant that she and the captain could talk privately. "So, mistress," said the captain, "another one to join you. and with 2 doctors, our own ship's doctor and this other doctor. We need not fear ship fever on this voyage." "What do you mean?" said Hester, alarmed. "You have another passenger?" "Didn't you know that this doctor, Chillingworth he calls himself, has decided to travel with you?" said the captain. "Oh, but you must know. He told me he's a good friend of the gentleman you spoke about." They know each other well," agreed Hester, trying desperately to look calm. "They live in the same house." No more words were spoken between them, but at that moment she saw old Roger Chillingworth standing in a far corner of the marketplace. He was smiling at her, a smile which, even across the wide and busy square, carried secret and fearful meaning. Before she could think clearly again, there was the sound of music, and a moment later she saw the band coming, followed by soldiers. Little Pearl laughed and jumped up and down excitedly. Next came the magistrates, and then the priests. Mr. Dimsdale was among them, but although his feet marched with the music, it is doubtful whether he actually heard it, as he seemed to be deep in thought. Hester watched him, and her heart was heavy. Was this the same man who had sat with her in the forest, holding her hand? He looked so different now, walking proudly, with his head held high, and without a single look at her. It was a dream, she thought. There can be no real love between us. How can there be, a man in his position? Pearl noticed the sadness which had suddenly come over her mother, and became worried and uncomfortable. When the priests had gone by, she looked into her mother's face and said, "Is that the same priest who kissed me in the forest?" "Be quiet, little Pearl," whispered her mother. "We must not talk in the marketplace about the things that happened to us in the forest." Then she heard her name spoken, and turned to see Mistress Hibbins behind her. "Now who would believe it?" the old lady whispered to Hester. "Look at our priest, Mr. Dimsdale. He looks so godly today. And only a little while since he went from his study to walk in the forest. Ah! And we know what that means, Hester Prynne. Can you be sure, Hester, that he is the same man that you met among the trees?" "Mistress Hibbins, I don't know what you are talking about," said Hester. Was the old woman as mad as she seemed? Did she really dance in the forest with the evil one, the devil himself? "Come, come, Hester. The Dark One knows those who have signed their names in his book." And, laughing crazily, Mistress Hibbins walked on. By this time, the first prayers had been said in the church meeting-house, and Hester could hear Mr. Dimsdale beginning his sermon. She stood close to the scaffold platform where she could hear most of his words. His voice was strong and clear and sweet. Sometimes he spoke quietly, and at other times with great passion. But Hester, who knew the guilt and misery in his heart, could hear in his voice a cry of pain, a cry from the very soul of the man. She listened, unable to move from the scaffold, that place of public shame which she knew so well. Little Pearl, meanwhile, had moved away and was playing and dancing about in the marketplace. Whenever she saw something which interested her, she ran across to it. She ran to stare at a group of Indians, then ran into the center of a group of sailors, who laughed and tried to join in her game, but she would not let them. The captain tried to kiss her, but she danced away. Then he called to her. "Your mother is the woman with the scarlet letter, isn't she?" he said. "Will you give her a message? Tell her that I spoke with the old doctor, and he will bring the other gentleman to the ship with him. She need only take herself and you. Will you tell her that?" Pearl ran through the crowd to her mother and repeated the captain's words. Hester listened with a growing misery. The plan for herself and the priest now seemed hopeless. And even as she suffered this great disappointment, a crowd was coming together around Hester, mostly people from the countryside who had heard about but not seen the woman with the scarlet letter and wanted to stare at her. The Indians, too, came to look. And while Hester stood in the center of that circle of shame, Mr. Arthur Dimmesdale stood in the church and received the love and respect of all who listened to him. When he finished his sermon, there was silence inside the meeting house. A minute later, the crowd began to leave the church, all talking at once. How beautifully their good Mr. Dimmesdale had spoken, they said. What a wise and godly man he was. There was a sadness, too, not in the words themselves, but in the way he spoke them. A sadness of someone who is about to die. Yes, their priest, whom they loved, and who loved them, had the sound of a man who would not be in this world for much longer. And Mr. Dimmesdale? It was his proudest moment. Now the band began to play again, and the soldiers got ready to lead everyone to the town hall. The people stepped back to make room for the governor, the magistrates, the officers of the town, and the priests. They shouted and waved, but the noise began to die away as the crowd saw their young priest, Mr. Dimmesdale. How weak and pale he looked suddenly! Where was the proud man who had marched to the church earlier? The man who had spoken with such passion in the meeting-house? His face was the face of a man already half dead. One of the other priests, old Mr. Wilson, stepped forward to offer his help, but Mr. Dimmesdale waved him away. They were near the scaffold now, and there stood Hester Prynne holding little Pearl's hand, and there was the scarlet letter on her bosom. Arthur Dimmesdale stopped, unable to go on, and then he turned to the scaffold and held out his arms. "Hester," he said, "come here. Come, my little Pearl." His face had the look of a man both sad and joyful who has finally won a battle inside himself. The child ran to him and threw her arms around his knees. Hester Prynne, moving slowly like a woman in a dream, also came near, but paused before she reached him. At that moment, Roger Chillingworth pushed through the crowd and caught hold of the priest's arm. "Stop!" he whispered to Mr. Dimmesdale. "What are you doing? Wave back that woman. Push away that child. All will be well. Do not do this. I can still save you." "You are too late," answered the priest. "With God's help, I shall escape you now." He put out his hand to Hester. "Hester Prynne, God has made me strong enough at this last moment to do the thing that I failed to do 7 years ago. Come now and be strong with me. Come and stand with me on the scaffold." There was great excitement in the crowd, but the priests and magistrates could not believe what they were seeing, and they remained silent. They saw the young priest with Hester's arm around him and his hand holding little Pearl's hand. The three of them climbed the steps of the scaffold and were followed by old Roger Chillingworth. "Is this the only place that you could find to escape from me?" whispered Chillingworth. "The scaffold?" "It is God who led me here," said Mr. Dimmesdale, "and I thank him for it." But he trembled as he turned to Hester. "Is this not better than what we planned in the forest?" "I don't know," she replied hurriedly. "Better? We may both die, and little Pearl may die with us." "God will decide, but he is merciful," said the priest. "Let me do now what God has told me to do. I am a dying man, Hester. Let me accept my shame before I die." He turned and looked down at the crowd. "People of New England," he cried, "you who have loved me, look at me now as I stand here with this woman. For 7 long years you have called her a sinner and hated her. You have seen the scarlet letter on her bosom and have crossed the street to avoid her. But there has been someone living among you whose sin and shame you have not known." He stepped forward, away from Hester and the child. "God knew him. The devil knew him. And now, at the hour of his death, you shall know him. He stands in front of you. Look again at Hester's scarlet letter. With all its mysterious horror, it is only a shadow of what is on my own bosom. Look, look, see for yourselves." And he pulled open his shirt for them to see his chest. Cries of horror came from the crowd. For a moment, the priest stood proudly, a man who has won a battle over his own pain and fear. Then he fell to the ground. Hester lifted him and held his head against her bosom. Chillingworth knelt down beside him, an empty, dull look on his face. "You have escaped me," Chillingworth repeated again and again. "You have escaped me." "May God forgive you," the young priest said to him. "You, too, have sinned deeply." He turned his dying eyes towards Hester and the child. "My little Pearl," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "Will you kiss me now?" Pearl kissed him, and her tears fell on her father's face. "Hester," said the priest, "goodbye." "Won't we meet again?" she whispered, her face close to his. "Won't we meet in heaven and be together forever?" "Hester, Hester, I don't know," he said. "But God is merciful. He has proved his mercy. He gave me this burning pain to suffer on my bosom. He sent me that dark and terrible old man to keep the pain always red hot. He has brought me here to die a death of shame in front of the people. Without all this, I would be lost forever. For this I thank him. I thank God. Goodbye." The final word came with the priest's dying breath. Chapter 10. Hester Prynne's Sadness. After many days, when there had been time for people to arrange their thoughts, there was more than one report about what had been seen on the scaffold. Most of those watching said that they saw a scarlet letter, like Hester Prynne's, on the priest's chest. But how long had it been there? There were various explanations, all of which were no more than guesses. Some said that Mr. Dimmesdale had burned the letter into his chest on the same day that Hester Prynne received her scarlet letter. Others said that old Roger Chillingworth had caused it to appear by some devilish magic, and others said it was a terrible sign of a guilty heart and of God's punishment. The reader may choose from these possible explanations. However, there were some who were watching who said that there was no mark at all on Mr. Dimmesdale's chest. Neither, they said, had his dying words accepted any part of or responsibility for Hester Prynne's shame. The priest, they said, by choosing to die in the arms of that sinful woman, was simply trying to teach his people that even the most godly of them were all sinners in the eyes of God. But nothing was more extraordinary than the way old Roger Chillingworth changed after Mr. Dimmesdale's death. This unhappy man grew weaker every day. Revenge had been his food and drink, and without it, his life had no meaning. Before the end of a year, he was dead. But he left all his money, together with land and houses in England, to little Pearl, the daughter of Hester Prynne. So Pearl became the richest person of those days in New England. This, of course, changed the way people behaved towards Hester and her daughter. Many families, thinking about the future, now saw Pearl not as a child of sin, but as a most suitable wife for one of their sons. But soon after Chillingworth died, Hester and Pearl disappeared, and for many years no one knew where they had gone. People told the story of the scarlet letter to their children and their children's children. The scaffold where the poor priest died remained, and was as strong a warning of shame as it ever was. And then, one afternoon, some children were playing near Hester's old cottage when they saw a tall woman in a gray dress go up to the door. In all those years it had never once been opened, but she seemed to unlock it before going inside. She turned in the doorway and looked back, long enough for those watching to see the scarlet letter on her bosom. Hester Prynne had returned. But where was little Pearl, now a young woman? Was she alive or dead? No one knew, nor did they ever find out. But for the remainder of Hester's life, she received letters from England, and in the cottage were beautiful, expensive things which Hester never used, but which spoke of somebody's loving thoughts towards her. And once, someone saw Hester decorating a baby's dress with the richest of gold thread. All these things led people to believe that Pearl was not only alive, but also married and happy, and that she did not forget her mother, and always kept her home in England open for her, if Hester should ever want it. But Hester Prynne's life was in New England. Here she had sinned, and here she would end her life. She had returned willingly, and once again put on her scarlet letter. Never again did it leave her bosom. However, in the years that followed, it became a sign not of shame, but of sadness. It reminded others that here was a woman who had done wrong, but who had been punished enough. And people, especially women, came to her for advice, for her wise words, for comfort in their times of trouble and misery and suffering. When she died, a new grave was dug next to an old one, but there was only one gravestone for the two graves. It was a simple stone. You may still see it there today, and on it was just one letter, a letter that had been scarlet, a letter that both began this sad story and brought it to an end.